In 1939, inside an orphanage in Iowa, 22 children were selected for what they believed was speech therapy. But some of them were not being helped, they were being tested, and the experiment would later become known as the Monster Study. The Monster Study was connected to the University of Iowa. It was carried out by graduate student Mary Tudor under the supervision of Wendell Johnson, a speech expert who studied stuttering. Mary Tudor worked directly with the children. Wendell Johnson supervised the research. The goal was to study whether labels, criticism, and praise could affect how children spoke. The children were vulnerable. They were orphans. They did not truly understand that they were part of an experiment. Some already had speech difficulties. Others did not. One group received encouragement. They were praised for speaking well. But the other group received negative feedback. They were told they had speech problems. Some were made afraid of making mistakes when they spoke. Some children became more self-conscious. Some became less willing to speak. Some carried emotional effects long after the study ended. The real horror was not physical violence. It was the slow destruction of confidence. The study was not celebrated. It became a warning about consent, a warning about experimenting on vulnerable people, and a warning that science without ethics can become cruelty. Decades later, the Monster Study returned to public attention, not only because of what happened in 1939, but because of the questions it left behind. What happens when vulnerable children are used in research without truly understanding what is being done to them? What happens when science forgets compassion? Later discussions, academic reviews, and legal action brought the case back into the spotlight. Some former participants said the experience left lasting emotional damage, and the University of Iowa eventually faced legal consequences connected to the study. But the story is not always simple. Scholars have debated what the original data truly proved. Some questioned whether the experiment clearly showed that negative feedback could create stuttering. Others focused less on the scientific result, and more on the ethical failure. Because whether or not the study proved its theory, one thing remained clear. Children were placed in a situation where their confidence, their speech, and their sense of self were put at risk. And that is why the Monster Study became more than a psychology experiment. It became a warning that research without consent can become exploitation, a warning that science without ethics can become harm, and a warning that sometimes the most damaging experiment does not require a weapon. Only words,